My sister lied and sold my car to pay her debts while I supported the family, so I moved out and let them struggle alone. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the reliable one in my family. The one everyone leaned on. The one who was strong enough to handle it. Meanwhile, my older sister was always treated like the fragile, misunderstood child who just needed more time, more patience, more chances. Growing up, my parents praised me constantly for being responsible, but that praise always came with expectations. If the electricity bill was short, they looked at me. If rent was late, my dad would sigh and say, "You're the dependable one, son." When I was barely out of my teens, I started contributing to household expenses, telling myself it was temporary. That this was what family did. I worked extra hours when my friends went out. I skipped vacations I'd been invited on. I pushed my own plans, moving out, taking risks, enjoying my 20s further and further down the road. Every emergency somehow landed on my shoulders, and every time I stepped up, my parents nodded like it was proof I was doing life right. My sister, on the other hand, bounced from job to job. There was always a reason it wasn't her fault. A toxic boss. Too much stress. Bad timing. She racked up debts she never seemed worried about, because someone always caught her when she fell. If I ever hinted at frustration, my mom would whisper, "She's sensitive. Don't be so hard on her." The thing that mattered most to me back then was my car. I bought it myself after years of disciplined saving. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Every payment represented late nights, skipped meals out, and saying no to myself so I could say yes to everyone else. That car meant freedom. Independence. Proof that my sacrifices weren't for nothing. I truly believed that if I kept being reliable, kept supporting everyone without complaint, loyalty and fairness would eventually come back to me. That one day, all of this would balance out. At the time, I had no idea how wrong that belief was about to prove itself. At first, it didn't feel like exploitation. It felt like purpose. Every time my parents called, their voices carried that familiar mix of relief and expectation. "We just need a little help this month," my mom would say softly, like she was afraid of breaking me. And every time, I said yes before I even checked my bank account. The pattern became routine. My dad would mention an unexpected expense over dinner, staring down at his plate. My mom would glance at me and say, "You're so good with money. You always know how to figure things out." It wasn't a request. It was a reminder of my role. I'd nod, already calculating how many extra shifts I could pick up. Meanwhile, my sister's crises grew louder and more frequent. She'd storm into the house complaining about another job that drained her mentally. She'd throw her bag on the couch and announce she quit again. My parents rushed to comfort her, murmuring things like, "You can't force yourself into something that makes you unhappy." When I asked what she planned to do next, she snapped, "Why are you interrogating me?" I started noticing the imbalance in small, painful moments. When I mentioned feeling burned out, my dad said, "You're young. You can handle it." When my sister cried about stress, everything stopped. The house would go quiet, like her emotions were fragile glass. I tightened my budget even more. I stopped buying anything that wasn't essential. My car became my one private space, late-night drives where I could breathe, grip the steering wheel, and pretend I wasn't trapped. The hum of the engine was the only thing that felt stable anymore. One night, after covering another temporary expense, I asked my mom carefully, "Do you think she could help out more?" She frowned immediately. "Why are you keeping score? She's struggling." The disappointment in her voice cut deeper than anger ever could. I told myself it was fine. That families weren't supposed to be fair all the time. That being needed meant being valued. But somewhere deep down, a quiet unease started growing. Because I was beginning to realize something unsettling, no one ever asked how much this was costing me, and no one seemed prepared for the day I might stop saying yes. The breaking point didn't come as a scream or a fight. It came quietly, the way rot sets into wood is slow, unnoticed, and irreversible. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one evening, the overhead light flickering slightly, while my parents talked around me instead of to me. We're thinking it might be good if your sister took a short break, my mom said, stirring her tea. She's overwhelmed. A break from what? I asked carefully. She hasn't worked in 3 months. My dad cleared his throat. That's not the point. She's emotionally exhausted. There it was again. Emotionally exhausted. As if exhaustion only counted when it wore her face. A week later, the real ask came. My sister had maxed out another credit card and needed help covering rent. My mom approached me in the hallway, voice low and gentle. Just until she gets back on her feet, she said. You know she wouldn't survive the stress otherwise. I hesitated. For the first time in my life, I didn't immediately say yes. My chest felt tight, like I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't see the bottom of. I've already helped a lot, I said. I'm starting to feel stretched. Her expression hardened, not angry, just disappointed. I didn't raise you to abandon family, she replied. That sentence stayed with me. Abandon. As if saying no once erased years of sacrifice. My sister didn't even pretend to be grateful. When she found out I was covering part of her rent, she shrugged and said, well, it makes sense. You're stable. Stable. Like I was furniture. Something you lean on without thinking. That night, I sat in my car long after the engine cooled, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at my reflection in the windshield. I felt invisible. Used. And deeply alone. For the first time, a thought crept in that scared me. What happens when the only thing they value about me is what I provide? I didn't know it yet, but that question was about to collide with the one thing I thought was still truly mine. Things shifted after that. Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone else would notice. But once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. My parents stopped asking if I could help and started assuming I would. Conversations became statements. Plans were made with my money already counted. One evening, my dad mentioned casually, your sister might need a car for a bit. He said it while watching TV, eyes still on the screen, like he was commenting on the weather. I laughed at first. What do you mean, need a car? She's got interviews, my mom added quickly. And her friend can't keep driving her around. Just temporarily. I felt my stomach drop. Why mine? There was a pause. A subtle one. My mom finally looked at me and said, well, you don't really go anywhere important. And your car is reliable. That word again. Reliable. Except this time, it didn't sound like praise. It sounded like justification. I reminded them calmly that I needed my car for work. That I paid for it myself. That it wasn't a shared family resource. My sister rolled her eyes from the couch. Wow, she said. I didn't realize you cared more about a car than your own sister. The room went quiet. My dad sighed, rubbing his temples. Why are you making this difficult? He asked. It's just for a little while. Every instinct in my body screamed that this was a line I couldn't let them cross. My car wasn't just metal and wheels, it was my escape, my proof that some part of my life belonged only to me. Giving it up felt like handing over the last piece of myself I'd kept protected. I'm not saying no forever, I said carefully. I just need boundaries. My mom's face tightened. Boundaries, she repeated, like it was a dirty word. Since when did you start talking like that? That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed replaying the conversation, feeling the weight of their disappointment pressing down on my chest. I told myself I'd done the right thing. But the next morning, I woke up to the sound of my parents whispering in the kitchen and my sister laughing. And that was when I realized they were already planning something without me. I woke up with that uneasy feeling you get when something's wrong but you don't know what yet. The house felt different, too quiet, like everyone was already in sync about something I wasn't part of. I checked the time, grabbed my keys out of habit, and headed toward the front door. That's when I noticed it. The driveway was empty. For a few seconds, my brain refused to catch up. I just stood there staring at the concrete, convinced I'd parked somewhere else the night before. Then panic kicked in. I checked the street. Nothing. My chest tightened as I rushed back inside. "Where's my car?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My mom didn't even look up from the sink. "Oh. Your sister borrowed it this morning." "Borrowed?" My hands started shaking. "What do you mean borrowed?" I said no. My dad finally turned around. "Relax. She had an interview. You were still asleep. So you took it without asking?" My voice cracked despite my effort to stay calm. My sister strolled in from the hallway, keys dangling from her fingers like a trophy. "You're being dramatic," she said. "It's just a car." I felt heat rush to my face. "It's my car. I paid for it. You don't get to just take it." She scoffed. "You weren't using it. And don't worry, I'll bring it back later." Later. The word echoed in my head. I looked at my parents, waiting, begging for one of them to back me up. My mom sighed. "Why do you always turn everything into a problem?" She needed help. Something inside me cracked. Years of swallowing frustration, of being told I was strong enough, reliable enough, reasonable enough, it all surged up at once. "So my boundaries don't matter?" I asked quietly. No one answered. They'd made the decision without me. Crossed the line I tried to draw. And in that moment, standing there powerless in my own home, I realized something terrifying. If they could take my car this easily, I had no idea what else they thought they were entitled to. She didn't come back that evening. At first, I told myself not to spiral. Interviews ran long. Traffic happened. I sat on my bed refreshing my phone, watching the minutes stretch into hours. Every vibration made my heart jump, only to sink again when it wasn't her. By 9, I went to the living room. "She's still not back," I said. My dad barely glanced up from his laptop. "She texted your mom. She's staying at a friend's place tonight." My stomach dropped. "With my car?" My mom nodded like this was the most normal thing in the world. She was exhausted. We didn't want her driving late. I laughed, but it came out sharp and broken. "So I don't have a car for work tomorrow?" "You can call in," my mom said. "Or take an Uber. Don't make this about you." That sentence hit harder than anything else so far. Don't make this about you. As if it hadn't always been about everyone else. I barely slept. Every scenario ran through my head: accidents, tickets, damage, strangers driving my car. It felt like my chest was being slowly crushed. That car was my livelihood. My escape. And now it was gone, and no one seemed to care. The next morning, I stood at the window watching the street like a fool, hoping she'd magically pull up. When she didn't, I finally snapped. "This isn't okay," I said, voice shaking. "You crossed a line." My sister FaceTimed from some noisy apartment, smiling like she was on vacation. "Chill," she said. "I might need it a few more days. Things are complicated right now." "A few days?" I repeated. "You didn't even ask." She rolled her eyes. "Why are you acting like I stole it?" I looked at my parents again. Waiting. Pleading. My dad shrugged. "Let's not escalate this." That's when it hit me: this wasn't an accident. It wasn't carelessness. It was entitlement. They had decided my needs were optional. And as I stood there, realizing I couldn't even leave the house without asking permission, a sick thought settled in. If they didn't respect my ownership, they definitely wouldn't. That afternoon, I finally got my sister to answer my call. The background noise told me she wasn't alone: music playing, people laughing, glasses clinking. It sounded carefree. Like a life untouched by consequences. "Where exactly are you?" I asked. She sighed loudly. "Why does it matter?" Because you still have my car. There was a pause, then a sharp exhale. I'm at a friend's place. I told you things are complicated right now. Complicated doesn't give you the right to take what's mine, I said. My voice felt hollow, like I was arguing through glass. She laughed. Actually laughed. You're acting like I robbed a stranger. We're family. That word family had become a weapon. Something used to excuse everything and protect everyone except me. When I brought it up to my parents again, they reacted like I was the problem. My mom crossed her arms and said, "You're being cold. She's finally trying to get her life together." At my expense, I replied. My dad shook his head slowly. This attitude is exactly why she struggles. You make her feel judged. I stared at him, stunned. Somehow, her taking my car without permission had become my moral failing. I felt like the ground under me had shifted, like reality itself was being rewritten in front of my eyes. That night, I lay in bed listening to the house settle. Pipes clicking. A door closing. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister, "Don't worry. I'll take care of it." Take care of what? My car? My job? My boundaries? I realized then that I wasn't just losing control over my property, I was losing my voice. Every attempt to stand up for myself was reframed as cruelty. Every boundary was labeled selfishness. And the more I pushed back, the more isolated I became. Lying there in the dark, something heavy settled in my chest. If I kept letting this happen, it wouldn't stop with my car. And deep down, I knew the next step they were about to take would be one I couldn't undo. The call came the next morning while I was standing in the kitchen, staring at a mug of coffee I hadn't touched. My phone buzzed in my hand. My sister's name flashed on the screen. "I need you to stay calm," she said immediately, before I could even speak. My stomach tightened. Why? There was a pause. Too long. Then, casually, like she was talking about the weather, she said, "So, something kind of happened with the car." Every sound in the room seemed to dull. "What do you mean happened?" She sighed dramatically. "Don't freak out. It's not a big deal." Those words made my hands go cold. "Tell me exactly what you did." Okay, I let a friend drive for a bit. We were running errands, and he knows cars, so I figured it was fine." I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. "You let someone else drive my car?" "Relax," she snapped. "Nothing bad happened." I pressed my forehead against the counter, trying to breathe. "Where is it right now?" Another pause. Then, softer this time, "It's parked." "Parked where?" "At a repair shop." The room tilted. "A repair shop, why?" She rushed her words together. "It made a weird noise, and the check engine light came on, and I didn't want to stress you out, so I handled it." Handled it. Like it was hers to handle. I heard my mom's voice faintly in the background, whispering, "Just tell him we'll talk later." My sister lowered her voice. "Mom says you're overreacting and that this can wait until you're in a better headspace." Something inside me went numb. "How bad is it?" I asked. She hesitated again. There, still looking at it. After the call ended, I stood there shaking. My car, my independence, my security was sitting in a shop I hadn't chosen, damaged in ways I didn't understand, touched by people I never agreed to. When my parents came into the kitchen, they didn't ask if I was okay. My dad just said, "Let's not jump to conclusions." And in that moment, I realized they already knew more than they were telling me. By the time I got to the repair shop, my hands were numb from gripping the steering wheel of a borrowed car. The place smelled like oil and burnt rubber, that heavy industrial scent that makes your head ache. I stood at the counter feeling completely out of place, like I was trespassing in my own life. The mechanic glanced at the paperwork, then looked up at me. "You're the owner?" "Yes," I said quickly. "What's wrong with it?" He hesitated just long enough to make my chest tighten. "There's transmission damage. Looks like the car was driven hard. Really hard." My throat went dry. How bad? He exhaled. Not cheap. We're talking thousands. And that's if nothing else shows up. I stepped back like he'd hit me. Driven hard. I pictured my sister laughing, music blasting, someone else behind the wheel, someone who didn't care because it wasn't theirs. I thanked him mechanically and walked out, barely registering the sun in my eyes. When I got home, my parents were already waiting in the living room. My sister sat on the couch scrolling on her phone like it was any other day. They say the transmission is damaged, I said flatly. My mom frowned. Cars break down. They don't just break down like that, I snapped. Someone abused it. My sister finally looked up. Wow. You're really going to accuse me? I laughed, sharp and bitter. You let someone else drive it. You kept it for days. And now it's wrecked. She rolled her eyes. I didn't ask him to drive crazy. That's not my fault. My dad stepped in quickly. Let's calm down. We'll figure something out. Something out. Like always. I felt something in me unravel. So who's paying? I asked. Silence. My mom spoke carefully. We don't think it's fair to put this all on her. She's already stressed. I stared at them, my heart pounding. So you expect me to cover it? No one said yes. They didn't have to. In that moment, standing in my own home, I finally understood something devastating. They weren't just comfortable taking from me. They assumed I'd always clean up the damage, no matter the cost. I didn't yell after that. I didn't slam doors or throw accusations around. I just felt hollow. Like something essential had drained out of me all at once. I went to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed staring at the wall while the sounds of the house carried on like nothing had happened. Dinner smells drifted down the hallway. Cutlery clinked. My sister laughed at something on her phone. No one knocked. Later that night, my mom finally came in. She sat beside me and spoke in that careful, soothing voice she only used when she wanted something. We know this is hard, she said. But families don't keep score. You've always been the strong one. I looked at her and felt something snap. Being strong isn't the same as being disposable, I said quietly. Her face tightened. That's not fair. I almost laughed. Not fair. The word felt meaningless now. I checked my bank account afterward. Savings I'd built for years, emergency fund, future plans, freedom would be gone if I paid for the repairs. Completely wiped out. And everyone was waiting to see if I would. That was the moment I hit bottom. Not because of the money. But because I realized the truth, if I paid for this, nothing would change. There would always be another emergency. Another excuse. Another moment where my sacrifice was expected and my limits were ignored. I lay awake that night listening to my heart pound, replaying every time I'd said yes when I wanted to say no. Every time I'd been praised for reliability instead of cared for as a person. I felt grief, not just anger, for the version of myself who believed fairness would come back around. The next morning, I made a decision I was terrified of. I told my parents I wasn't paying for the repairs. The room went silent. My sister's head snapped up. My dad stared at me like I'd spoken another language. You can't be serious, my mom said. I am, I replied, voice shaking but steady. I didn't know it yet, but that sentence was about to cost me more than money. And what they did next would finally show me exactly how conditional their love had always been. The silence after I said it felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. My mom was the first to recover. So you're really going to do this? She asked, voice trembling, not with sadness, but disbelief. Like I'd just broken some unspoken contract. Yes, I said. I didn't cause the damage. I didn't give permission. I'm not paying. My sister shot up from the couch. Unbelievable, she snapped. After everything this family has done for you. I stared at her.
Name one thing.
Her mouth opened, then closed. My dad stepped in quickly, irritation creeping into his voice.
This isn't how we raised you. You're being selfish. That word landed hard. Selfish.
After years of sacrifice, after draining myself dry for everyone else, that was the label they chose. My mom's eyes filled with tears, not because she felt bad for me, but because I wasn't complying.
If you loved your sister, she said softly, you wouldn't let her drown over money. Something twisted in my chest.
She's not drowning, I replied.
She pushed someone else underwater and expected me to hold my breath. The room exploded after that. Accusations flew.
My sister screamed that I'd always judged her. My dad said I was tearing the family apart. My mom told me I was breaking her heart.
And then it happened.
If you don't help fix this, my dad said coldly, maybe you shouldn't be living here anymore.
The words felt unreal. Like a threat meant to scare me back into line.
I looked around the room, the couch I'd helped pay for, the lights I'd kept on, the house I'd financially held together for years.
And I realized they meant it. I went back to my room in a daze.
Packed a bag with shaking hands.
Clothes. Charger. Documents. Every item felt like a quiet goodbye. No one stopped me.
As I stood at the door, my mom said, "You're making a huge mistake."
I turned back once. I already made it, I said. I just didn't see it until now.
I walked out without a car, without a plan, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying anyone else's weight.
I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong.
I slept on a friend's couch that first night, staring at the ceiling while my phone buzzed nonstop.
Missed calls. Texts.
Not apologies, demands.
You're overreacting. Come home so we can talk like adults. Your sister is falling apart because of you. I didn't reply.
Over the next few days, the truth unraveled without me lifting a finger. The repair shop refused to release the car without payment.
My sister couldn't afford it.
My parents tried to negotiate, argue, guilt their way out of it only to discover something shocking. No one else would step in.
Relatives they'd leaned on before suddenly couldn't help. Friends stopped answering. Without me quietly absorbing the damage, the mess was fully exposed.
And for the first time, my parents had to sit with the consequences of protecting one child by sacrificing the other. A week later, my dad called. His voice sounded older.
Tired.
Your sister had to sell some things, he said.
We're figuring it out. I waited for the apology. It never came.
Instead, he added, you really hurt your mother.
That's when it clicked. They didn't miss me. They missed my function. I hung up and blocked the number. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No final speech. Just silence and peace settling in where guilt used to live.
I found a cheap room to rent. Took the bus to work.
Saved slowly. Carefully. This time, only for myself.
Months later, I heard through someone else that my sister blamed me for abandoning the family. My parents backed her, of course. That narrative made it easier. But here's the thing they never expected.
Walking away didn't ruin me. It rebuilt me.
I learned that love without respect is just control wearing a softer name. I learned that being reliable doesn't mean being disposable. And I learned that sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't confrontation.
It's refusing to be used ever again. I don't have my car anymore. I don't have a relationship with my family. What I do have is something I'd never had before. My life finally belongs to me.